The recording is on. We'll call the order and do a roll call
Blake Ellefson,
here.
Michael Stark, Gary Eater,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Jim Schultz.
Here.
All here. Number 2 on the agenda, public comments. Is there anyone, it doesn't appear that anyone here, is there anyone online for public comments? Again, public comments online. Last time, last call, public comments. Doesn't appear that we have any public comments today, so we've been moving on into the agenda. Approval of agenda. Do we have anyone that would like to make an approval? Looks like Mike Stark here.
Mike Stark, motion to approve the agenda. Gary Eater, second it.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any comments, discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the agenda as is? Vote. Aye. Any no? Okay, moving on. Back to number 4. What do you got there? She's moving so approval of the minutes. All right. So is there anyone that would like to make a motion on the approval of the minutes from July 17th? Or what was the date? Mike is
The minutes say July 19th.
19th. I'm sorry.
I
she's
think it
moved-
was the 17th, though.
I believe you're correct. I'm sorry, that was a typo.
All right, good, because I had 17th on my minutes here and I was confused, so that's one edit we'll make is the date of that is July 17th is when we met. Pat, you have a,
Well, so do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes, changing the date to the 17th.
This is Pat. I'll second, but I have another correction.
Oh, okay.
okay,
And the other correction is on number 4. It says that Pat Kinney was elected vice chair. Mike Stark was elected vice chair. So Mike Stark and the Pat Kinney need to be reversed. And then could you also check in case staff has published a list of chairs and vice chairs for committees that they get that correction in case they have that reversed also? All right, thank you.
okay, so we had a couple edits, the date, and then we're gonna fix that Mr. Stark is the vice chair. Does anyone want to approve the agenda with those edits?
Well, I believe we have a motion and
Oh.
a second, and if we accept the edits, so.
Oh, but take a vote on the agenda as
So the
edited.
amendments, if you want to call those amendments, then
All right, so the amendment to change the date and then the amendment to fix Mike Stark as vice chair.
I'll make a motion that we add those 2 amendments.
Gary Eater will second that.
All right, let's take a vote. All those approve? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on.
Now you got to go back to to the
We're gonna-
motion itself.
Let's go back to the motion of approving zoning committee meeting minutes
With the amendments that were just
with
approved.
the amendments that were just approved. Thank you, Pat. King. So we're ready to vote. Let's take those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. We are moving on. You gotta go back. I can't read that. My iPad locked up on me. I'm sorry. Yeah, just keep it. Yours is locked. Okay. So we're doing number 5, zoning, discussion action items. Approval of the 2025 budget.
One thing that I wanted to mention is that some of the numbers in your packet are not correct. The sheet that I had handed out prior to the meeting that has the most accurate splits, as I do work in two separate departments. Zoning pays for a portion of my salary, as well as land conservation pays for a portion. And so I will be fixing the numbers after the meeting, and I will send them out to all the committee members. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. So
Um,
does anybody have any questions looking over our proposed budget? I have in here that Bruce is a contracted position and that I'm a full-time staff, however, split between two positions. A couple of the new programs that we've initiated this year is we have switched from 3 separate permit tracking programs into one program called Catalyst. And so you should be able to view all permits, all pumping records. Eventually, we'll be able to start applying for permits online, which that's something the office hasn't done before. And we also started accepting credit cards, which is something our office has never done before. So that is something new that we've done. Couple of the goals that we'd like to do for this upcoming year would be to go through each ordinance and clear up any misunderstanding areas, any gray areas, and put together all amendments past and present to clear everything up, as well as scan all of the permits that are currently in the zoning office. The zoning office has permits dating back to 1969, and we do not have digital record of all of them. Per statute, we are required to keep them forever. However, these papers are getting older and people wrote in pencil and they're getting harder to read. And so my goal for this winter would be to scan all of these permits onto a hard drive. So that way we had another form of having those records. And then at the bottom here, I put some of the things that we do in the zoning office. We help assist with assigning addresses. We've issued building permits, sanitary permits, non-plumbing permits, and we also review soil tests. So there's numbers over the last few years. And then like I had told you with our budget that I had presented, the numbers for the salaries and the benefits will be changing just a slight bit because I had the percentages a little off. And so those numbers will be switching and I'll send those out after the meeting. So we will be asking a little bit of an increase as far as office supplies goes, as far as ink. I don't know if any of you have gone down to the zoning office recently, but we do have a display case outside of the door. Because I do work in two departments, I like to have all of the applications available in our office as well, even when I'm not there. And so we created a display case that shows all of our applications. We have ordinances out there, business cards, any information that a property owner might need. And so that, of course, increases this expenditure of ink. And then we are also going to ask for an increase as far as advertising or the publications goes. If we're going to be looking at amending these ordinances, that will require public hearings, and that costs money as well. So just those are the only two changes in our budget. Everything else is pretty much the same as last year. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer any of them.
Pat has a question.
I'll ask the administrator. So on the wages for Brittany, from where she was to where she's going, you had said in the wage study increases would be 2.5%. This one is 2.56%. I'm wondering if you were, when you said 2.5, if you were just kind of rounding or,
No, this should be 2.5%.
I think it translates into 2.56 if I did that right.
This is Brittany. Can I make a comment?
Yes, as long as it's related to this, yes.
And we're not on,
Yeah,
we're not on your,
no,
Brittany.
I understand. I'm looking at Sue's sheet that she sent out everyone, and the 2025 wage increase is 2.55%.
Okay,
I'll talk to her. It should be 2.5.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
I saw it on the top of the sheet. It
Yeah.
says 2.55 as well there. So
Oh,
it just right here.
so we're looking at this whole budget thing collectively, or are we going sheet by sheet? I guess I was thinking we're doing collectively. But whatever.
So I had a question. When you mentioned you'd printed off these documents, now do people have access to go online to complete and then have like a online submission form so that you don't even have to print?
That is the goal. We are not quite there yet. However, we're close.
I guess I want to, so I'm looking at the packet on.
I think we should probably go through that, the budget line by line a little bit, as a group, because this is our chance before it goes to the finance committee to make changes that are being requested. And so one item that I always struggle with is when I look at this, I need to have like comp year over year, right? So like, and I'm not saying we have to right now, because obviously that's not it, but just being able to compare. That's always something that I ask for as a financial person, just so we can get a sense of where the growth and expense or anything else is. So I would just guide towards that, as we go forward.
On this first page here, I do have last year's budget of what we spent and we were under budget. I can provide those numbers to you after the meeting. I will supply last year's budget as well as the previous years. So that way you have an understanding of what to compare to.
So yeah, if you could bring this up, I guess one item that I kind of was, maybe for Dan, when we talk about healthcare, and the wage is almost comparable to her healthcare cost, is that right?
Well, healthcare costs, we budgeted a 5% increase over last year. It should, healthcare should be around 28,000 a year.
So if you look at this sheet she gave us, in the green, it says 2025 wage, and then it says health,
Yeah,
and we've got 33,000 roughly in health, and we've got 36. So again, I'm just high leveling, looking at it and
right.
saying,
I think that number's without, Risha, is that just the employer share or the total cost?
The green sheet shows, I believe, the split between zoning and land conservation, so that should be the total.
Well, the health plan doesn't cost 33,000 per
But
employee.
Dan, that's what the sheet says.
I realize that, and so.
So
that
I just
number's
got to
not-
make sure when I'm asking, you
That
know,
number's not correct.
yeah.
It should be around 28,000 for a full-time.
Which is significantly different. than
Right,
that.
and this year we're on track at 21,000, so.
I'm sorry, this sheet we were working on first thing this morning prior to the meeting. And so there, I'll make sure to get that corrected.
Yeah, because if you look in her budget here, it says 26,000.
And that was before the percentage split. So this number will change just a little bit. Mary Jo will pick up more of this health insurance because this is budgeting me at 80% with zoning, and we have a 70-30 split. And so this number will decrease just a little bit, and I will send out the new numbers after the meeting.
Yeah, because
Pat, go ahead.
I think it's on this particular page that this question would be relevant to. So the previous term I wasn't on zoning, but the term before we added a fee for people with septic systems. And I forget if it was like $6 or $8 or $9, something like that. So we're collecting that money and one question is, where's that money going in terms of county costs? At the time of that discussion, the intent was it would largely cover the cost of having staff go out there and check things, are they getting pumped and that sort of stuff. And so kind of where are we with that? And then the record keeping, Ashland County was in the process of trying to keep track of where every permit was and are they getting pumped when they should and all that stuff. So the intent was to kind of get there. So kind of that broad question. But then also it occurs to me with that item that was sent to the county board at the last meeting with the people needing a permit for, they got a hunting shack, but they need something. Are we going, where's the line for that fee as far as systems? We obviously do it for a mound system, a conventional system, and a holding tank. Are we going to include it for other things? And is that something that's been considered?
So the revenue line item, this 45186, this POUT zoning, I do believe that is the $8 fee per property owner that has a system. And I believe that was budgeted in for $16,000.
So Blake, I went back and looked at the health insurance numbers for the year end last year, and it was at 25,301. So if we budgeted a 5% increase, it should be around, what, 26,000.
Maybe going back to Pat's question there. So Trish, did you say the 16,000 is what we bring in for the $8 pouch fee? Okay. So that was created before I came into this job, but from what I understand, because the state mandated the counties to do a tracking system, that's where that cost was, the $8 fee was going to. And we did update that just this past winter to Catalyst, I believe is the name of the new one. I don't know what they charge the county, if anyone else knows what that cost is, but that's a new tracking system. The old one, they just quit us. I think at the end of the year, their contract was up and they didn't renew it. So we had to go to this new system. And I don't know what they charge the county for it, but that's what I would expect, this $8 would go to that. So every time a tank is pumped in Ashland County, the pumper is required by state law to enter it into the system. And also with the nice thing about this new system is we can put all of our records into it, where the holding tanks are, where the septic tanks are and mounds. And then we can watch also to see when they get serviced or not. So as far as I know, that's what this $8 was for. It's a pouch fee, private on-site wastewater treatment system.
So it's for that. So it was for record keeping, we were told, because at the time we had work to do on that. So it's going towards that. Whether it covers it all or not, somewhat of another question. But when I think about what we approved at the last board meeting, let's say you've got a pit privy. Occasionally that might need to be cleaned out, but we're only going to leave it with what we're currently doing. We're not going to expand it to pit privies and
Yeah,
other things.
I mean, we could, if we wanted to get technical, we could put, because we have all the every privy that has a permit for it will be on this same, we'll have it recorded. So we could watch to see if they got pumped too, if that's you're taking it, or
Okay.
you're saying if the $8, if we charge for that too.
Well, there was two parts to what I was thinking. One is the $8 led to a tracking system, so we knew if things were getting pumped versus
Yep.
doing something else or not doing something. And then the related part was, are we going to extend that to other things and why or why not? Because we didn't talk about that and I'm not sure we had
Yeah.
considered that. But if all those other things are in the system that you can track things, then we should know what is where. And then if staff says, you know what, there's a pit privy over here, let me see if what that looks like, you know, is it?
Mhm. Something to consider. I would just say privies are so minimal. There's just so little, for the most part, the bacteria eats it away as fast as it's put in there, so it's probably not gonna be pumped hardly ever.
So one of the things that, probably not a big concern, but when I learned about what some people do with their holding tank, when I was looking at pit privies for my property, one thing occurred to me is, you know, even if you had a pile of people living at the site and you put in a pit privy, if the county's gonna leave you alone, why not just take a sump pump in that and use that? It's a whole lot cheaper than putting in a holding tank. You know what I mean? So I think we need to keep track of the pit privies too and make sure they're used as intended.
Yeah, it would be, that's something we can add to our maintenance.
I think one thing we just have to caution, Pat, is that $8 fee, I don't think is covering $16,000 annually. So if we go down that angle of pushing now more maintenance, more filing, more work on us, we got to raise our fees to cover our costs. And I don't think we've done a break-even analysis to date, what it sounds like, whether that $8 is covering 16,000 annually. I guess it probably isn't. No. So I think just being cautious of what we ask our zoning and from an administrative standpoint, without more money coming in from something. That's just my personal. So we've had a few questions about this. I don't think we need to go line by line. There's a lot of zeros. Does any other, are there any other questions at this point related to this? And could you go back to the first document as well? So if everyone's okay with this one, I just wanted to go to this spreadsheet. And one question that kept coming up is this 9/11 thing, and I just had a little, so is there revenues generated when we do that then? When we have a 911 number called, so it defrays our cost and?
Yes, so for every 911 address that's issued, the zoning office collects $25. Then the highway department collects the remainder part of the fee. From there, I'm sort of the middle guy when it comes to the highway department or the addressing portion of it. I collect the addresses, I send it out to the highway department. Highway department goes out and collects the GPS points. And then Matt Erickson will send it to Brittany and myself. Brittany will create the address and then she'll assign the addresses. From there, I'll send out the letters letting them know what their new address is and order the signs. So we do receive a small portion of the application fee, but we do receive a portion from every application issued.
I would say, based on all the things you just said, we need to look at increasing that charge to help increase some fees. And I think that was one question I kind of had is, do we often look at the fees that we've been charging as Ashland County for some of these services to make sure that, because again, I think when we want to grow, when we want to say like, hey, we want to increase staff, we want to do more projects, we got to look at the revenue side, and $25 for all the things you just mentioned might cover like a portion, right? And I know we're the essential services here at the county and having that, but we're also going with Bayfield County on this expensive, combination together. And so this is something I think, $25 looks a little light, but I don't want to, come in and just change everything. I think as a group, we collectively should look at all of our fees this year, not now, So for 2025, we can look at maybe possibly increasing fees around the edges.
Okay, just wanted to also mention that we did look at the fee schedule and there was a change in some of the fees, including the 911 addressing. It went from $200 to $250 per homeowner. And so we have recently increased our fee schedule. That's just something to keep in mind. I can provide the old fee schedule as well as the new fee schedule to you if you'd like to compare. But we had a meeting between myself, Brittany, and Matt when the highway department came on. Prior to Bruce joining, Josh, the previous zoning administrator, was the one going out and collecting those GPS coordinates. Now the highway department took that on. And so then we had a meeting in regards to who's doing what step and where that money is going towards.
And again, I think it's not a discussion now. I think for all of us that are new to this though, just maybe a breakdown of every fee that comes in. And then obviously if there's been changes recently, we wouldn't touch those, but just kind of looking at maybe how long since those have been touched.
Maybe just for a little update to you, last year we did go through probably just about every one and took a look at them. And we looked at the neighboring counties where they're at. And we did up some of our fees last year. Our dwelling permit went from 300 to 500, which we've heard a bit of squawking about it, because that's a pretty good increase. I think our sanitary was right about the same as everyone else, around $400. Them are the two that we give out the most permits for, sanitary and dwelling. So we're kind of in line with them ones.
Yeah, Bayfield is at 400 on sanitary. So
Okay, so we go back to the agenda. So there's a few tweaks that you're gonna send out after this meeting, pretty minimal. But is there anyone that would like to make a motion on the 2025 budget? On number 5?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget with the few tweaks on there.
Do you have more questions, Pat?
this is Pat will second.
We got a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Moving on to number 6, land description, discussion, action items.
All right, so for the land description office, we have 2 employees. We have myself full-time in that office, and then I have an assistant property lister who's in my office 70% of the time, and then the other 30% is with Register of Deeds. We don't have any changes to our positions. No new programs or services for my department. Being kind of a service-oriented department, we don't have too many goals aside from just providing, customer service as needed, keeping our maps up to date, the records up to date, that sort of thing. And then below that is some performance metrics as far as how many documents we process each year, the assessment changes that we import from assessors, our total county parcel count, tax bills produced, et cetera. Are there any questions on that? document.
So when we talk about the issues on Sanborn, there was quite a few, I think, that came off the rolls.
Yes.
That was directly you, right? When you had to
Yes.
take those off.
Yep.
Now is that completely over, or are there still some discussions around other parcels?
So the bulk majority of it is done. But there are still changes that happen throughout the year. I work with the town of San Bern assessor closely to, deal with those. And then, usually I'll send him a list of ownership changes just before tax bills come out. And if there are any owners or people who have bought property that are going to now be exempt, they're exempt immediately, not just the usual January 1st cutoff. So then we have to mark those exempt before tax bills go out.
So there's been some properties that have sold back to tribal members, so they come off the tax roll. Does that impact the town of Sanborn, or does that impact Ashland County, how does that, from an overall taxation standpoint, like, does everyone else's taxes go up?
When it's just a few parcels here and there, like it has been after the big initial removal, I don't think it impacts the rest of the county taxpayers in a significant way. Obviously, it did that first year when they all came off because equalized value was set. And then after that, they took all those parcels off the tax roll. So you were seeing, tax bills that were double what they normally are. And I believe that impacted the rest of the county as well, increasing taxes, but at this point they don't.
I think what she means to say is that the effect on taxpayers is so minor, it's hard, it doesn't really measure. At least for the county and the school district. The town of Sanborn, it does hurt them a little bit more because obviously they're pulling off from their base and it's much smaller.
Is there any other questions? Maybe if you could go to the zoom in on that. So that's the similar situation, 2.55 at the top. Just clarify with us, Dan.
Yeah, I'll clarify with Sue and check the wage study numbers myself and make sure that.
Does anyone have any questions on this page? We could just go to the last one. There you go.
Okay, so this is our our budget here. The top two lines are revenue. And the rest of it is expenses, obviously. Over 90% of our budget is salaries. And the rest is just our basic office functions, phone, computers, office supplies, that sort of thing. Service of papers is used for civil service fees when we have to serve the delinquent tax notices to people. If we can't serve them via certified mail, we have to send the sheriff. And there's fees for that. Printing and binding, that's the account we take the tax bill paper from, as well as any paper we order for specifically for the assessment and tax rolls, and binders for those as well that we have to provide to the municipality by statute. Let's see. Advertising is similar to service of papers. We have to advertise in the newspaper when the owner of the land is passed away and we can't serve them via mail. Obviously, we have to publish it in the paper by statute. Marker remonumentation. We pay out bounties to the surveyors when they file a PLSS, Public Land Survey System corner tie sheet, which reestablishes the location of a section corner. So depending on if they have GPS coordinates, or if they're reestablishing a corner, setting it new, well, all those things determine how much we pay for them. Obviously, we pay more for GPS coordinates because that's more useful for us in our mapping. And those last two are just expenses related to our foreclosure process. I will note most of the budget is the same as last year, except for salaries, of course. I am also requesting a $200 increase on my travel budget. Last year, I was elected president-elect of the Wisconsin Real Property Listers Association. So I will be serving as president of the association starting in this September. I asked for an increase just for going to other association conferences. For example, the Surveyors Association wanted the property listers to come speak to them at one of their conferences in January of 2025. And so they requested that I go to that. The other increase is on the marker remonumentation. That increased from 2,000 to 3,000, just to better reflect what we will be paying out for those, since we've been getting, we have a new surveyor in the area, and we've been getting more of these tie sheets recorded. Any questions?
Mr. Kinney?
The very first line, the very first word, profit, given we can no longer charge more than our expenses when we sell property on tax deeds, is profit the word we want to use, or is it reimbursement of expenses related to tax deeds, something like that?
Yeah, we should probably change the wording on that. It's not, what goes in that account is not only profits, it's just all of the money from when we sell a tax delinquent property just goes into that account, and then
But
from
that's
there
just-
we pay out.
It's recovery of expenses.
Right.
So let's call it revenue. Revenue,
No,
not
it's
profit?
more properly, isn't it recovery of expenses, or, but profit isn't the word. I guess you and
Right.
Dan can figure out the word, but we're not supposed to be able to profit on these anymore, so maybe we take that word out just to not raise a red flag anywhere.
Right, yeah, it should be all the expenses, Jen's time and publishing in the paper, and that we can get reimbursed for.
I think we're good on this. I have no other questions. I think everyone's kind of had an opportunity. One question I had, just high level. So Ashland County's 2 years delinquent taxes that they foreclosed, Bayfield County's 5 years. How does the different, and again, this is county by county across the state, so I don't, but how did we land on 2 years? Or was that always been kind of?
Yeah, well, so I believe Bayfield County does in rem for their delinquent tax process. We do the tax deed route. So where they go through the courts, we just have a notice that is mailed, and then after their given amount of time, we file the tax deed immediately. So by statute with tax deed, I forget, it's a certain number of days past the date of sale when the county taxes go to sale. So it averages about 2.5 years for when we can start foreclosing.
I'm looking at the banker next to me that was talking about revenue a few minutes ago. This is really off the top of my head. And I'm thinking about Bayfield County. Obviously, I grew up there and have land there. And so, we kind of pay attention to that stuff. But now that you point out that difference, and we can charge as part of our fees, 12% interest when they're behind on their taxes. Is that correct? I think it's 12, or is it 18?
No, I think it's 18.
18.
Yeah.
If I could get 18% of my money somewhere, I'd gladly take it. So maybe we think about, do we really want to start looking at taking properties on the sooner than later end and maybe just say, you know what, there might be some properties, we'll just let that sit for a while because we've already got, you know, whatever staff time into it to this point. And if we just let it sit for a while and the numbers from a revenue side look attractive, meaning the property is worth a lot more than the taxes they owe and the fees occurred so far, is maybe we just let some of these properties sit for a while. And if they pay it off, great, you know, and I mean, great, then they've got more time to pay it off and figure things out on their end. But on the other hand, if it's essentially 18% interest that we can accrue for a property that is clearly worth at least, you know, the fees being incurred, maybe we let some of those ride for a while, and that would provide a source of revenue and give people more time.
I would, without saying it from a banker standpoint, say that your time would be less tilted to that, especially in the first 3 years if you change that. So considering what he's talking about is the revenue side, and that is significant. In seeing parcels that go 4 years and then they come back and they pay it all back with fees and interest. Bayfield County's winning that every time because those property values are far higher than the tax assessed value. So they'd never lose money on that land if they had to get it back. And so if you think about how much money you make at 18% and the fees associated with that, going into year 3, going into year 4, and your time is less served because you're not every 2.5 years having to foreclose. I think it's a consideration we should talk about again, a 2025 event, but I see it as a real big opportunity for Ashland County to increase their revenues on that side. Okay. Well, hearing no more about that, I guess if we go back to the agenda, I think we've all had our chance to go through it. So does anyone on number 6 want to make an agenda item, land description, approving of the 2025 budget? Anyone want to make a motion?
Schultz, I make a motion to approve the 2025 budget, the land description as presented with few minor word changes.
We've got a motion. Any second?
Can I ask for an amendment to that or
Sure.
clarification for that? Approve the budget with the understanding that the labor numbers may change because it could be to 2.5% or 2.55%, and that the healthcare numbers may change too.
So basically he approved the agenda item with a tweak to the salary adjustment and the healthcare adjustments being updated after this meeting.
Correct.
Do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. We can move on, right, to 7? All right, moving on to number 7, land records. Discussion action items, approving of the 2025 budget.
So the GIS and Land Records Department budget is pretty unique. I have a non-lapsing fund to hold my grant funds and then any revenues that come in. And that is mainly to account for the grants that run a 2-year period. And so in that, a lot of things that we purchase on a 5-year cycle are things like imagery, which can run like $100,000, $90,000. And so making sure I maintain a significant amount in that non-lapsing fund is very important for the whole land record system of Ashland County. And I have been in this position for 5 years now, going on 6, I believe. We usually float about $120 to 80,000 in that now non-lapsing fund. The other thing with the GIS department, we've actually never utilized levy dollars before. So for the newest thing for 2025 is I will be seeking $26,000 in levy funds this year. And that is to go towards the GIS coordinator position, my position. So previous to the wage study, I was able to fully fund my position with the grant monies. However, with the wage study, I no longer can fully cover that. So I'm looking for levy dollars to cover the rest of my position. And the major benefit of that I will no longer be constricted to what my grant what my grant application tasks were. So sometimes I have a hard time justifying work that's outside of a grant task. And as I grow the GIS department from the ground up, I'm starting to reach out and help other departments. And sometimes some of that work can't be justified in a grant award that I've had. So that will make grant management a lot simpler on my end and more efficient. I do have grant expenses that I've been paying out of that non-lapsing fund that are well-established grant allowable expenses, such as the limited term employee that's the Register of Deeds back indexing clerk. They work 300 hours a year. It's pretty minimal work, but it was our previous Register of Deeds, Karen Miller. So the amount of work she can get done in those 300 hours is very impressive because she knows the system so well and has done it for years. Any questions on that? Okay, I will move into the goals. So as you guys know, the Ashland Bayfield Joint Dispatch Center is in transition right now. We're looking at possibly the physical consolidation in November. That's the goal. We have some technical difficulties with the phone companies. With that, we are working on a new CAD system and including a new map solution for the Joint Dispatch. That's going to be quite a big project. We're looking at using our GIS Department of Military Affairs grants to cover some of that work. As the Land Information, or previously known as the Land Records Department, we write a 3-year plans and have goals outlined in that. So we'll be working towards those. 2025 to 2027 is a new plan, so I'm working on writing that right now. And I would like to increase collaboration with county departments and help them with their mapping needs. And we just switched to a new self-hosted web map, and I would love to see more functionality built into that. So I'll be working on that. But I have a very busy workload for 2025, so we'll see how much I can really build into it. So for the performance measures, I wasn't really prepared to state how many map requests, how many data requests I get per year. I haven't been tracking that kind of thing. So moving towards 2025 and from now, I definitely will be tracking how many data requests and map requests come in. As it was kind of talked about earlier, I do the computer side of actually assigning the addresses and assigning the roads. So I have some numbers in there. Those are also rough estimates because not only am I helping Ashland County, I also assist with City of Ashland, Town of LaPointe, and City of Mellon. They usually assign their own, but sometimes in circumstances they ask for help with complicated ones. The Wisconsin Land Information Program provides 3 grants annually that last 2 years. And so that can be seen in the base budget grant, the strategic initiative grant, and the training grant. I have those numbers there. And the strategic initiative grant usually funds the corner remonumentation project. So that is contracted with our surveyor. And then the base budget previously had covered just my position. However, now I'm seeking the change in that and then helping cover the cost of the register of deeds. So those grant applications are due in October. So it's a bit of a mismatch when it comes to budgeting for them. However, I did reach out to the state and those numbers were the best estimates they could give me for 2025. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't write them down. They're $70,000, $20,000, and $1,000. So roughly what we got last year. And then the DMA, Department of Military Affairs, Next Gen 911 grant. That will be discussed next, and I am seeking around the same that I went for in 2024. And that work is, it helps us with GIS tasks that would take me personally a handful of years to fully complete. You know, when I first took this job, I was so excited to have a lot more GIS work, but running the department and coordinating everything, I sadly don't get much time to do GIS tasks anymore. But so the grant really helps us do some things that aren't capable in 1 year. And with the consolidation, we want to be ready to go as that comes along, and they've really helped us with that. The Land Information Council selected the vendor, and I'm very it's a very positive experience. They have been a great team to work with, and they've gotten a lot done for us. Just off the top of my head, they managed to add in 3,000 addresses in the city of Ashland that were missing from the data sets due to some political stuff in the past. But so Dispatch, we're about to unveil that to them, and I'm so excited to get that on their desk. And then at the bottom of the sheet, I just put on who I collaborate with, and those are all for the 2024 year. Carisha, can you go? Is there any questions on this sheet?
I just have a couple questions. So we have our new grant writer in the office here with us, and I'm curious, as we go forward, will you see some of your time opened up with assist on having her help with grants, or are these the type of grants that are so niche that you're still going to have to spend your time applying for them?
Yeah, so the Land Information Program grants, they have been giving to counties since the 2000s. So it's a pretty simple process. And I do want to involve Erica in them and get feedback and see if there's can be any efficiencies, I guess. But for those ones, I'm not quite seeing so much. Now with the DMA grants, the 911 grants, those are a bit different. They are competitive. They are reimbursement. So those are two newer things for me. So I definitely will be working with Erica on that. I did supply the grant application that I wrote up for her. But just the timeline, you know, because she just started, and then the grant is due in 2 days. So going forward, I definitely will involve Erica in grant processing.
And I think what I'm gonna probably say to every, including the administrator, is every grant we apply for, she should have tracking, obviously, and so she knows everything that the county gets. thank you for the very thorough, and I really appreciated the goals and how you went through those. That was great. Thank you. Pat?
I look at the GIS in Ashland County and Bayfield County fairly often for reasons related to both counties. One of the things that strikes me is Bayfield County fairly early did a lot of GIS work and put a lot of resources online. And it really makes it nice when you're looking up things for whatever reason and knowing what's going on. I think it saves staff some time too, because you don't have to make as many phone calls to find stuff. But I also think it supports development, whether it's a person wanting to retire up here and put a place on the lake, or a business doing whatever they do. I think all the things with zoning that are being addressed, and I think the POTUS is an important part of that, because it's about protecting the environment and the water that we have. I think all of these things are really basic infrastructure for supporting economic development, because you need all these things in place for it to be a place where people want to live and work and function. And we know this summer, the realtors, weren't happy with things being down. I was aware it was down because I was looking for stuff, and so you don't have something that other people have, and it puts you at a disadvantage. So all the stuff with 911, that's important as far as just basic public safety. People want to live in a rural area. They expect to be able to call 911 and get an answer. The broadband contributes to that. It's all tied to making Ashland County more livable and, a nicer place to do business, because this is what other people are used to. So it's pulling us, further into the future and more competitive than we otherwise were. And on your budget, part of what I'm thinking is I think about state mandates. What do we really have to do? There's that. And then there's all this other stuff that we have to do to be competitive if we want this to be a place where people want to live and work. So how do we make ends meet? We've got levy limits tied to net new construction. We need net new construction to be able to increase our general levy. So it's kind of, it's both are important. So it's kind of a step-by-step process. So the more we do on zoning all these things, it helps us in the long run to be a more attractive place, which helps with net new construction, which helps with the revenue side of things. So, your budget request to me makes a lot of sense, because the alternatives, there's nothing attractive about not doing it now. It's more costly, and it leaves us at a competitive disadvantage. And I don't know if there's any way for Erica, who's much better with words than most of us, I don't know if there's any way of her taking some of that and making the case for grants somehow, somewhere, that this is really basic infrastructure for, what we do here. These are the basic things that people and businesses look for.
That was more of a comment than,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, okay.
But
But
it was a way of supporting the budget.
I think we all, I do support that as well, the ask, and I can understand. It does appear that some of the grants have gone away or been reduced, and I've been hearing that at different levels, from different people in the community. Have you noticed a little tightening of grants, or just less dollars out there?
Yeah, so the Wisconsin Land Information Program grants are pretty unique because those funds are they're directly tied to she fell, I'm sorry. Sorry, she fell. Those Wisconsin Land Information Program grants are specifically tied to how much revenue the state of Wisconsin and Ashland County bring in on Register of Deeds recording documents. So the state has we had a big boom with like 2021. And that is where you can see that strategic initiative grant was $70,000. That was the highest it's ever been in its history. And so then it kind of crashed in 2022, I believe it was, and then they only give us $10,000. And so that was just a reflective of how much people were recording documents in the Register of Deeds and kind of the real estate market at the time.
Yeah.
And so that was reflected. And then with the DMA grants, it's actually been the opposite. So that's with the state, and they first came out pretty low, and then the pool is grown because I think there's a large push for all 72 counties to go to what is called Next Gen 911. And that essentially utilizes actually spatial data and GPS locations instead of just table lookups from phone companies. And so I think there's a big push and demand for all of us to do it at the same time, and we've been working with the state on that.
Okay. I'm good on this document. If anyone else has any questions, I guess we'll move to the wage GIS, or I'm sorry, the extended budgeting. That's the one. So this one just kind of highlights all the stuff she talked about and summarizes it. I don't have a lot of questions. Is there anything you'd like to highlight in here that we should note?
This is the Springbrook printout. I don't have anything to highlight. I did the fourth document is the Excel sheet that I manage, and it has last year's and this year, so we can kind of touch base on that in
Yeah,
that one.
let's go to that budget. I like that and how it showed correctly is okay.
Yeah, so not much change from last year. The part-time salaries changed. I used to help fund the assistant property lister. However, we determined that it made more sense since I'm no longer utilizing that position for just the two departments that utilize it to pay for that. So the decrease can be seen there. I went from a family health insurance to a single health insurance. So you can see a big decrease there. The education is that grant for $1,000. Software fees went up a little bit as a part of the land records department. It's very common for them to assist with things like register of deeds and what we call land description. It's just kind of all three of those fit together. Some people lump in zoning and have like a mega department in their county. So I do help pay for register of deed softwares. And those continue to go up. So at this point, I'm actually paying more per year for register of deeds software than I am my own GIS software. So I thought that was interesting, but I've been working with Julie, and she says she does utilize what they pay for. And so she really did not want me to cut that. And we have been working on, I don't know if anybody's seen the new Land Shark site, but Tryman is updating it. So I'm at least happy to see they're trying to keep up with the time because their old site was pretty outdated looking. I cut office supplies because that's usually only the printer in the courthouse, and I haven't printed very much often. And then my Land Information Association went up a little bit, but and then the marker remonumentation is just that strategic initiative grant at 20,000. So if that happens to go lower, then that expense will just be to match whatever the grant can cover. And then for the revenues, that's all just my best guess at what is gonna come in. Any questions on that?
Hearing none. Pat's got one.
Is there any way that, we're going to this next gen 911 and then there's some updates and stuff the county should do. Is there any way of leveraging the work that needs to be done as for a grant or other sources of funding from the state or something? Because, yeah, we want to do that work anyway, but it's compelling to do it now because of this change. Is there any way to use that to make a case for additional funding?
The DMA grants are very specific on what is an allowable expense and what is not. And so if you're gonna do something like staffing, it has to be a brand new position in the first year. So my time on the grant or on the next gen transfer is not an allowable expense. However, contracted work is an allowable expense. So I will be seeking that again in 2025, since I have a good partnership established. They work right directly into our data. So it's minimal processing on my end to integrate what they've already done because they're already working right into our stuff now that it's on the server and it's we allow them access. Did that kind of answer your question, Pat?
It sounds like we're doing as much as we can do on that front and trying to leverage as much as you can. So, all right, thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions about the budget for 2025? Hearing none. Go back to the agenda here. Would anyone like to make a motion on item 7, land records, approval of the 2025 budget?
I'll make a motion, Mike Stark make a motion to approve the land records 2025 budget as submitted.
We've got a motion. We have a second. We've got a second.
Schultz, I'll second it.
Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we're on to land records, Department of Military 2025 Next Gen. Looks like Dan or Brittany want to provide an update?
Yeah, so I have been working with Ashland County stakeholders, and that's mainly the dispatch center and the sheriff, and then Bayfield County as well. So just making sure we're all in the loop on what we're doing. And this grant, the total is 58,600. It is a 5% match, which will be roughly $3,000, just under $3,000. And so the tasks in this grant will help with, it'll cover the contracted work for Datamark. They provided a quote, and that work will cover the state mandated uploading of the GIS data to what they call the GeoCom hub. And from there, the state then uploads it to what they call the EZNet. And essentially that gets us online so that we're next gen ready. As for a timeline, we are shooting as a combined PSAP to be on the EZNet in mid to end of September. But like I said, we're having a bit of issues with technical issues with Brightspeed, so that we're not exactly sure. To be on the EZNet, you want to have what is called an 89% accuracy, overall accuracy, and that encompasses the GIS layers, the MSAG tables, which is the phone company tables, and then the alley, which is also tables of records. And so the contract says that Datamark will take any errors or flags that GeoCom hub provides us, and that they will work on correcting it the best that they can. And then what they can't, they'll come back to me, and we meet every 2 weeks to discuss changes, any verification they need on my side. And a part of that also is just making sure that what the term is called edge matching, so that Ashland and Bayfield County and our other surrounding counties aren't overlapping in any degree. So I also allocated some empty hours, I guess I would call it, for the joint dispatch program. So if it comes back where there's a big task that I think they can complete for us, I will definitely use those hours up with the consulting, so that it frees my time a little bit. Yeah, and then the other portion is a software that helps just making sure that the data is validating properly and that the data can be uploaded to the state. So just those things, and those are all allowable expenses. I'm expecting to get fully funded on this project. As a side note, I just wanted to make you guys aware, my counterpart in Bayfield County, Scott Galecka, came to me last Friday and asked to put in a couple items in the Ashland County grant. But after speaking with the PSAP director, Jamie, Jamie and I came to the conclusion that they're not necessarily items that Ashland stakeholders want, and that Jamie also didn't see the need for. And so when it really comes down to the match of this grant, I personally don't think we need to write in the item was pictometry, which is kind of like a street view for Ashland County. And dispatch has told me they don't want it. They do enough. They don't need to learn a new software. They don't want to use it. They don't think they'd utilize it. And the total cost was $300,000 for the software and the imagery and the flight. However, Ashland just doesn't have that match either, because that's like a $15,000 match. So I just wanted to bring that up to you guys. I know, I believe maybe 3 years ago, Ashland County and myself, we were specifically looking at getting pictometry, but we found that the cost benefit analysis just wasn't there for that product. So I did not write it into the grant. Any questions on that, on the grant?
I had just
Additional,
a question
Oh, go ahead.
on, so the Datamark Technologies is the third-party company that we're kind of using, and we
Yeah.
renewed the contract through the end of this year. So annually then, there's gonna be a partnership with them as a third-party vendor. Is that a recurring item of expense that we'll likely have to eat as part of that relationship, or will there be grant funding long-term for that?
There is no reoccurring contract. Every year it is a new contract. So we can essentially cut ties as soon as grant funding is gone, and that is my intention. As long as there is grant funding, I will definitely continue to seek it. However, the work that needs to get done, I will find time to make it happen, and the rest of it that, is greatly benefiting the county, if I can find grant dollars for, I'll continue to utilize that.
Pat?
This is Pat. Regarding the pictometry, I've used that in Bayfield County more than a few times. It's cool, it's nice, it's interesting, all that good stuff. But from Aspen County's perspective, all things considered with the budget, I agree with your decision that at this time, that's not something to pursue.
Great. I appreciate the support on that decision. Because I want to work well with my counterpart in Bayfield County. However, I just think we have a bit different on our funding sources,
Does that put us at all at like a long-term maybe relationship issue, or is this just one-off where they can go forward with it if they choose, we're okay without it?
Yeah, it's a one-off thing, and Grant, I'm sorry, his name's Scott. Scott is understanding that Ashland doesn't have the financial ability to go for these larger things.
Okay, well, thank you for the update. Are we needing an approval on that, or was to apply for the grant?
Do you want a motion to apply for the grant? Yeah, I'll make a
I,
motion.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Mike Stark make a motion to apply for the grants, for the, next gen 911.
We've got a motion to approve the request for the Next Gen 911 GIS grant. Do we have a second?
Gary Ader, a second.
Mr. Ader seconds. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, other business. Mr. Kinney.
I don't,
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I don't have any other business except for I will plan to go over fees with you guys in the future.
If you could maybe send just the fee schedule around as well to all the people on this committee. I'm sure we have it available to us, but if maybe just send an email.
Yeah.
Mr. Kinney?
For the property listing, the first line there on one of them was the profit on the land sales. Is that recovery of staff time and expenses? But it doesn't include the actual property taxes that we collect on, does it?
It does include the property taxes. It includes everything. So
Including the actual taxes?
yeah, it includes the taxes, the expenses, and our profit from the past.
So I wasn't on zoning last term. So $10,000 includes the taxes, so there wasn't very much property sold in the past 2 years, is that?
So the 10,000 that I'm putting in there is my best estimated guess on what we will bring in
Going
on
forward?
sales for the next year, just because of all the stuff that's going on with the legislation and figuring that out and everything. So like in 2024 on the budget, we have 20,000 in there, but we haven't done any sales or anything this year because of the change in legislation.
So on the budget, Dan, when we look at collecting back taxes, where does that money go in the overall budget?
Well, it goes in that line, but eventually just ends up into the general fund.
So whatever, all of that money in that line would end up in the general fund?
So, so when we get paid, the tax certificate is wiped out. And then the money is put in the general fund and it becomes spendable money.
This is only when we take
When we
the
take a
tea-
property,
the deed in lieu. So most of our taxes, if they go past due, we really hope that the property taxes get paid by the owner.
right,
But in those rare situations, which is pretty rare right now because the land values are pretty strong.
uh,
So people would benefit from a sale as opposed to letting it go to the county.
right.
So that revenue goes to the general fund. It's not revenue that their office has access to for filling budget needs.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
okay.
It's,
Yeah.
no, it's going to pay off the tax certificate. And then the general fund gets paid for work that Jen has already paid, done.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to
And
make
which the
sure,
general fund covered in the first
yeah,
place.
I just want to make sure.
But I do have a note to change the title of that line. So,
All right, so we're on other business. Is there any other business that anyone would? So hearing none, we'll move to our scheduling of next meeting. We've been doing, I think, Tuesday morning.
Whatever works best for the committee.
Of course, of course. Well, since we're at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, let's keep it simple. Does everyone have availability? Is this a need for a monthly meeting or can we push this now till possibly October or November, depending on needs of what you guys have?
typically, this would be every other month. So
So,
October 8th, or yeah, October 8th to keep the same schedule.
We've
I-
also done as needed a lot in the past.
well, just because I'm the new chair and things are kind of moving, I would like to have a meeting in 2 months on October 8th, just so we can kind of get everyone's familiarity with fee schedules and keep talking. So let's plan on Tuesday, October 8th, 9 a.m. It'll be every other month for now. Does anyone have any opposition to that? Okay, so we've set our next scheduled meeting. Line number 10. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Boy, do I. Oh, this is Pat. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We've got a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Ader, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed. The meeting is over. Thank you.